Details are trickling in from US President Donald Trump's summit with Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Alaska. There are reports Putin told Trump he'd be willing to freeze the Ukrainian front lines and not attempt to take more territory in exchange for the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk. Donald Trump has also told European leaders he's open to offering US security guarantees to Ukraine.
In the immediate aftermath of the Trump-Putin meeting, some commentators were joking it was half-baked Alaska, saying nothing of significance, in particular a ceasefire, had come from the meeting. But news quickly emerged of a meeting between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky scheduled for Monday in Washington. Statements around that meeting suggested Trump appears to have shifted his position to favour bypassing a ceasefire and moving instead directly to a peace agreement. More details emerged on possible US security guarantees when German Chancellor Friedrich Merz mentioned them on German TV.
This morning, Trump gave us detailed information about the content of the conversation, which was much more far-reaching than what we saw in the press conference. And now there are security guarantees on the table. For example, the question of how to secure a corresponding peace agreement with Russia in the long term. And the good news is that America is prepared to participate in such security guarantees and is not leaving it solely to the Europeans.
And French President Emmanuel Macron posted on social media saying any lasting peace must be accompanied by unwavering security guarantees. I welcome in this regard the readiness of the United States to contribute. Even Putin himself seemed to allude to Ukraine's security as part of the discussions. I agree with President Trump. He spoke about this today, that of course Ukraine's security must also be ensured. Of course, we are ready to work on this. But in Kyiv, there was a mixture of anger and resignation at the summit and suspicion of Putin's motives.
The result is zero. That's what was expected. Russia has been coming to conquer us for many years, and they will keep trying for a very long time.
Sooner or later, it'll be resolved anyway. I think Putin has discussed this with China, with Iran, with Brazil, the BRICS countries, and on the other hand with America.
We hope that at least something will be agreed upon. That's all.
All eyes will be on Zelensky as he carries the hopes of his nation into talks with Trump on Monday.
Our Washington Bureau Chief Ines Pohl is in Anchorage, Alaska. And Ines, it's a really important moment to have access to your experience as reports of details emerge from the talks. Can you give us any more detail on these reports and how much perhaps we should trust them?
You know, on his way to Ankara, Donald Trump himself said in the plane to our colleagues that he wouldn't give in if the outcome of the summit would not be a ceasefire, that then Vladimir Putin, Russia, would face even harder sanctions. And of course, the opposite happened. He agreed on, obviously, that a ceasefire is not the most important thing anymore, but a peace deal. The problem here is, of course, that this peace deal probably will take months, if not years, and this buys Putin a lot of time to kind of increase and continue his military actions in Ukraine. So it is indeed a very different outcome what many, not only Ukrainians, but I'm sure many people around the world were hoping for.
One more intriguing detail about yesterday's meeting, Ines, was of a letter written by Melania Trump delivered by her husband to Vladimir Putin. What can you tell us about the contents of that letter?
Yeah, that's of course interesting that Donald Trump's wife, who is from Eastern Europe, she was born there, is writing a direct letter to Vladimir Putin, urging him, not in direct words, to stop the war and bring back those kids who were kidnapped by Russians, these Ukrainian children, but is talking about the voices of children that Putin himself would be able, with the stroke of a pen, to make children, I paraphrase this here, happier again. And she was getting involved earlier on. President Trump referred to her, saying that she Melania Trump told him to be not too friendly and not too trustworthy with Vladimir Putin. So she's really getting involved here, and that's pretty unusual, I would say, at such a high-stake meeting that she, or her husband rather, is delivering a letter directly to Putin. We shall see what the outcome is, but we have heard that Putin read this letter immediately once he got it.
So one outcome we do know, Volodymyr Zelensky will meet Trump in Washington on Monday. Last time it was great content, but a diplomatic disaster. What are you expecting this time around?
Yeah, it indeed was a disaster. I mean, I was there at the White House and I really can recall it very vividly, how shocked everybody was, not only seeing and hearing how Volodymyr Zelensky was talked down on, but also how he left the Oval Office. Everybody is hoping that this won't happen again, but it will be very, very difficult for the Ukrainian president because Trump probably will put a lot of pressure on him to agree to this deal, to accept the existing front lines and work on a peace deal. But Vladimir Zelensky can't really do that. He can't really say, okay, Russia, you can keep 18-20% of Ukrainian territory. So a very, very difficult mission here for the Ukrainian president. And it shall be interesting if he brings some help from European leaders. Maybe even the German chancellor might be traveling with him to Washington, but we don't know yet. Nothing is confirmed yet, but there are a lot of rumors, and I'm sure we will learn over the next couple of hours if Zelensky is coming alone or if he brings someone in support.
There's an awful lot of movement, Ines. It was easy in the hours after the meeting to be cynical about the summit, but on what we are hearing now, can this meeting with Putin be considered a success for Trump?
It depends. It really depends on the outcome. I mean, some say it is a success that security guarantees are now back on the table. And this is, of course, very important for Ukraine. But others, of course, say it's very tricky because Putin is buying so much time and he definitely will use this in his advantage. Donald Trump tried or is trying, of course, to sell this as a success. But we really have to wait and see what happens on Monday in the Oval Office in Washington.
DW's Ines Pohl in Anchorage. Thanks so much. Well, for more, I'm joined by Mikhail, Alexseev, Professor of Political Science at San Diego State University. In the immediate aftermath to the summit, we wondered whether it was all a big show that wouldn't change so much. But do you agree that if these reports are right, that this seems potentially like a really significant turning point?
It could be a significant turning point, but it's a turbulent and dangerous point. In essence, I see two big outcomes of the summit. One is that Putin scored an important, significant PR victory. He is an arsonist, in essence, who started the war, but he was positioned as a firefighter, standing with the President of the United States under the slogan, "Pursuing Peace." And also, Russia continued bombing Ukrainian cities while the talks were going on, in essence, sending the message that the United States can accept that kind of behavior, and therefore it's a weak actor on the world stage, that Russia can pursue its interest and other nations should listen more to Russia than in the United States in future interactions on many issues in different parts of the world. So the second dimension is that if you think of how long they spent talking and what kind of people were there in the conversation, it may even be that the Ukraine issue was not the principal goal there, but the principal goal was how to reopen Russia for business, how to get American businesses profit from economic cooperation with Russia in the future, and then deciding what sort of deal to offer Ukraine in order that the war can be stopped and this kind of agenda can be pursued.
So on that offer to Ukraine, do you think President Volodymyr Zelensky would swallow a very bitter pill and take the apparent offer to give up around 20% of Ukrainian land to the man that invaded his country?
Well, the deal that Putin proposed is completely unacceptable. And it, in essence, puts Ukraine in a position of a prisoner who is tortured to confess, but who will be killed if he confesses. And so the only option in that situation for Kyiv is to reject that deal. If you think of the nature of the deal, it is a deal that almost ensures the eventual death of Ukraine, because Putin proposes to take over strongholds in the Donbass, where Ukraine now has strong defenses, large population centers, and where Russia concentrates most of its troops and launches massive regular offensives. He proposes to freeze the conflict in the south, Kherson and Zaporizhia, where Russia very insignificantly attacks. So, what we will see then is Russia repositioning its forces for more rapid advances, threatening larger Ukrainian cities like Kharkiv and Poltava, and maybe even Dnipro, and gradually gaining more advantage and battlefield, gains. So also, if Ukraine signs this deal, it will wreak havoc in Ukrainian society. It will polarize it. It will splinter it. I conduct opinion surveys in Ukraine with the Institute of Sociology of Ukrainian Academy of Sciences. And we just finished a poll in July. And still about 50% of Ukrainians, 48% to be precise, they want all of Ukrainian territory in the recognized international borders of 1991 to be returned to Ukraine.
And so against that backdrop, if you don't mind me interjecting, Zelensky will now meet Trump in Washington on Monday. The last time it was a diplomatic disaster. What are you expecting then when Zelensky goes to Washington?
Well, I believe that obviously Zelensky would learn from this. But three things to consider. First of all, we see that Trump oscillates. Whether he, after talking to Zelensky and European leaders, will modify his position, that's possible. If Zelensky conveys the resolve not to agree to that deal, it will also be important, because then it would be harder for Trump to reopen Russia for business. So he will need to reconsider. And thirdly, European participation and European support will be crucial. That's a very positive development, as well as the United States agreement to consider security guarantees for Ukraine.
Mikhail Alexseev, Professor of Political Science at San Diego State University. It's been great to get your input. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.